Chosen one, you have been standing at a door and asking for another key, but the key may already be in your hand. That is what changed today. From the outside, it may have looked like nothing. No miracle appeared in front of you, and yet something shifted because you stopped forcing an answer that would not come. Maybe you closed a page you normally would have kept scrolling. Maybe you caught the old spiral before it pulled you under. Maybe you sat in silence and did not chase another sign. It felt ordinary. But small moments can reveal big changes when they interrupt a pattern you have repeated for years. If I were to use the language of faith for that moment, I would say, God smiled. Not because you performed some perfect spiritual act, not because you suddenly became worthy. You stopped treating force like faith. You stopped fighting yourself long enough to listen. Because the problem may never have been that you lacked intelligence or creativity. Feeling disconnected from your intuition does not mean it disappeared. There is a distinction almost nobody teaches us to make. Ability and access are not the same thing. You can possess an ability and still struggle to reach it in a certain state. You can know a name and suddenly lose the word. You can know an answer and only see it after you stop pushing. You can spend an hour forcing an idea, then walk away and find the answer while doing something simple. The capacity did not suddenly appear from nowhere. Something about access changed. I call the distance between what you possess and what you can use in the moment the access gap. It may explain why you sometimes feel like an older version of yourself was sharper. Maybe you remember being more curious, more willing to try. Then adulthood filled the room with deadlines, noise, fear, repetition, and constant judgment. Slowly, the person who once created without permission began asking for permission to trust a single thought. That does not mean your mind was destroyed. It means there may be conditions that make more of you easier to reach. So do not ask what is wrong with me. Ask a better question. What conditions help me access more of what I already have? That question changes the direction of everything. It moves you away from shame and toward observation. It moves you away from panic and toward agency. And it prepares you for what comes next. First, why searching for more signs can increase confusion. Second, why ability and access can feel so far apart. Third, what you finally did today and why it matters. And fourth, one simple 8-minute audio protocol I found while researching ways people try to support a more integrated mental state. I will not call an audio track a miracle. I will not promise the same result for everyone. For now, register one identity shift. If this feels familiar, write this. I trust what is returning. You are no longer calling every moment of fog a verdict on your future. You are learning to separate who you are from the state you happen to be in. And here is the next piece. The first force blocking access may not be a lack of signs at all. It may be the opposite. You may have received so much input that your mind has had almost no room to integrate it. That is where the real pattern begins. Chosen one, now we reach the first pattern. You may believe your confusion means you need another sign, another message, another confirmation. But what if the problem is not a shortage of guidance? What if the problem is saturation? Too much input can make a clear mind feel uncertain. You feel uneasy, so you search. You find one message and feel relief. Then doubt returns, so you search again. Soon you have 10 opinions, 5 interpretations, and no space to hear your own response. The search feels productive because you keep receiving something, but receiving is not the same as integrating. This happens in spiritual spaces all the time. You move from one video to another. The issue appears when the search never ends. Your attention keeps opening new doors before the previous room has become clear. That is what I call signal saturation. You keep adding information because uncertainty feels dangerous. But every new input gives the mind another thing to sort, compare, question. Eventually you can mistake overload for lack of guidance. Your system may simply need less input and more time to process what is already there. Here is the first breakthrough. You do not always need a stronger signal. Sometimes you need a quieter receiver. That does not mean ignoring reason. It means creating enough space to test what you already know before running toward another answer. Receive, pause, integrate, act. Then decide whether more input is necessary. The old cycle says receive, search, receive, search. It produces motion without resolution. The new cycle gives each signal a chance to become a decision. It asks you to slow down long enough to see whether the last insight changed anything in your behavior. If nothing changes, another 100 messages may only create more noise. If you are still here, you probably recognize the difference. You have felt clear, then opened another tab and became confused again. You have received a useful answer, then buried it beneath newer ones. You have had one simple truth in your hands and searched until you no longer trusted it. That is a pattern you can observe and interrupt. Try one rule the next time you chase certainty. Before you search again, ask what the last useful message actually asked you to do. Then give yourself space to act on it. You are not closing your mind. You are protecting your ability to integrate. This idea will matter later. While researching why different modes of thinking can feel disconnected, I found a neurological idea that changed how I looked at this problem. It involves the way different parts of the brain can contribute different strengths to processing. I will not pretend that one scientific idea proves every spiritual experience, but the connection is worth understanding, and we will return to it. For now, hold this truth. More is not always clearer. More signs can create more comparison. More advice can create more hesitation. The answer is not to reject information. The answer is to give information somewhere to land. And that brings us to a harder question. Signal saturation explains confusion, but it does not explain why you can know you are capable, yet feel unable to reach that capability when you need it most. Why can an older version of you feel sharper or more alive than the person you are today? To answer that, we need to go deeper into the access gap. Now, imagine this scene. It is late. Your screen is open. A task that should feel simple has been sitting in front of you for far too long. You know you are capable, but tonight your mind will not cooperate. The words are there somewhere, yet you cannot seem to reach them. This is where people become cruel to themselves. They say, I am getting slow. I am losing it. I used to be sharper than this. Feeling foggy is not the same as being unintelligent. Hesitation is not proof that your intuition is gone. A tired state should not become your identity. The access gap matters. It is the distance between the ability you possess and the ability you can access in a particular moment. A name disappears, then returns 10 minutes later. A solution refuses to come at your desk, then appears while you are showering. Nothing magical had to be added. The state changed, and access changed with it. Think about your best ideas. Many did not arrive while you were squeezing your mind for an answer. They appeared on a walk, in the car, right before sleep. That does not mean effort is useless. Effort builds knowledge and skill. But sometimes, more pressure creates more interference, while a different state makes the same mind feel more available. This reframe changes the question. Instead of asking what is wrong with me, ask what state helps me access more of what I already know. When is your mind clearest? What environments make you scattered? What happens after hours of switching between screens, messages, videos, and unfinished tasks? You do not need to diagnose yourself. You only need to notice patterns. Maybe you think better after a walk. Maybe silence helps. Maybe certain hours give you more clarity. Maybe notifications destroy the thread of a thought before it becomes useful. The point is to stop treating every low-access moment as proof that your capacity has disappeared. Here is a simple check. Ask yourself 3 questions. What am I forcing right now? What signal am I ignoring? What could I remove for 10 minutes? These questions are not magic. They interrupt pressure long enough to see whether your state is contributing to the problem. Sometimes a small reduction in noise changes what becomes visible. Picture, tomorrow morning. You wake up and do not immediately flood your mind with 20 inputs. You let one thought finish. You choose one problem. You give yourself room to notice the next clear step. Nothing supernatural has to happen. You are simply more present inside your own decisions. Self-trust grows through small moments of clear action. If this idea lands for you, write these words: clarity over force. There are times to push, work, train, and persist, but force should not become your only tool. If every closed door makes you push harder, you may never notice when the real invitation is to change your state before trying the handle again. And now the mystery becomes deeper. Why do so many people remember a younger version of themselves who felt more imaginative, curious, and alive? Adulthood brings knowledge, but it also brings habits, repetition, judgment, and constant self-editing. Somewhere along the way, many people stop asking what could be possible and start asking what will be accepted. That does not prove your younger mind was objectively better. It points toward another possibility. Perhaps some ways of thinking become less available when they are used less often. Perhaps the person you miss is not gone. Perhaps certain modes of thought have become harder to reach beneath years of noise and routine. And that is where the genius memory begins. There was a version of you who did not need permission to be creative. You asked strange questions. You connected ideas that made no sense to anyone else yet. You built worlds from ordinary objects. And you did it before you learned to judge every thought before it could breathe. That memory matters. I call it the genius memory. It is not proof that every child is secretly a genius. It is something simpler. Many people remember a time when curiosity felt easier, imagination moved faster, and experimentation came without the same fear of being wrong. You did not need every idea to be useful. You only needed freedom to explore it. Then adulthood added structure. Deadlines arrived. Expectations became louder. Slowly, you became more skilled at editing yourself before anyone else could. That skill can help you, but when it becomes automatic, it can also narrow the thoughts you allow yourself to follow. This is why I do not want you romanticizing childhood. You are not supposed to become a child again. You have knowledge now that you did not have then. The opportunity is not to move backward. It is to recover modes of thinking that may have become less practiced. Maybe you once drew without asking whether it was good. Maybe you built something just to see if it could work. Maybe you asked questions because the question itself felt alive. Then one day you started measuring every idea against usefulness, approval, money, or certainty. That is where creative range can begin to shrink. There is an old Greek word, metanoia. It is often translated as a change of mind or a change in understanding. Restoration does not require inventing a new self. Sometimes it begins when you stop interpreting your current pattern as permanent. Think of one memory from when you were younger. A moment when you created, explored, or imagined without needing permission. Do not make it mystical. Just remember the feeling. The mind moved before judgment arrived. That feeling is not a command to abandon reason. It is a reminder that reason needs something alive to work with. Most people respond to mental dullness by adding more stimulation. Another video, another technique, another answer. But you stayed long enough to question the state receiving all of that input. That matters. Because the next layer is not about finding one magical idea. It is about understanding how repeated habits can train a mind toward fragmentation. And remember the neurological idea I promised to return to. We are getting close. A scientific concept should not be stretched into a miracle claim, but it can still give us a useful way to think about specialization, cooperation, and access. Before we get there, one uncomfortable truth has to be faced. Adulthood does not only add knowledge, it also trains routines, filters, and self-editing. In a world filled with constant switching and pressure to perform, those patterns can become so normal that you stop noticing what they cost. The genius memory is not nostalgia. It is a reminder that another mode once felt natural to you. So the question is no longer, how do I become who I was? The better question is, what parts of my thinking have I stopped giving room to practice? If certain modes can become less accessible through neglect, perhaps they can become more available through intentional conditions. That is where the next threshold begins. Here is the twist. You may have been trying to strengthen the signal when the more useful target was integration. That changes the problem. Instead of asking how to get more information, you begin asking whether your mind has enough space for different forms of information to work together. Look at the environment around you. One task becomes 6 tabs. A notification interrupts a thought before it finishes. None of this means modern life is evil, but repeated switching can train your attention to live in fragments, and fragmentation can start to feel normal. I call this the narrowed receiver. It is not a diagnosis, it is a pattern. You become practiced at certain ways of thinking, while other ways receive less room. Speed and immediate response get rewarded. But imagination, reflection, and deeper integration often need something the modern environment rarely protects. They need uninterrupted space. This is where people can misunderstand the problem. They assume the answer must be a stronger frequency, a louder message, or a more intense practice. But if the receiver is already overloaded, adding intensity may only add more signal to a system that has not finished processing the last one. More input is not always more access. If you have tried meditation tracks, manifestation audios, binaural beats, or endless frequency videos, you may already be skeptical. Good. Keep that skepticism. The tool I will show you later is not something I want you to accept because it sounds spiritual or scientific. Evaluate it by what it claims and whether the protocol fits you. The product material describes that tool differently from generic brainwave tracks. I am not going to blur those categories just to make the pitch sound stronger. What matters here is the underlying idea of integration. Different modes of processing can contribute different strengths, and the useful question is whether conditions can support better cooperation between them. That does not mean every problem comes from a divided mind. It does not mean one audio fixes everything. If your life constantly demands rapid switching, constant judgment, and endless consumption, then restoring periods of deliberate integration may be worth exploring. The goal is to become less fragmented. You now understand nearly the entire pattern. You were not necessarily short of signs. You may have been saturated. You were not necessarily losing ability. You may have been experiencing an access gap. And the younger version of you was not magical. That version simply lived with different habits of attention and permission. But one piece is still missing. Why did the moment you stopped forcing today matter more than every extra sign you could have found? Because that moment did something very specific. It interrupted receiver resistance. It broke the reflex that says every uncertainty must be attacked with more effort, more searching, and more control. That is the threshold. Not passivity, not giving up, not pretending every feeling is divine guidance. It is the moment you stop using force as your only language. And once that happens, you finally have enough space to discover what your own mind does when it is not being pushed. You have almost reached the answer. What did you finally do today? You did not find another key. You stopped shaking the door long enough to notice what your hand was already holding. And that is where everything turns. Now, we can answer the question that has been following you from the beginning. What did you finally do today? You stopped treating force as faith. That is the shift. Not a miracle performance. You stopped fighting the receiver long enough to notice what was already there. I call the old pattern receiver resistance. It begins with uncertainty. Uncertainty creates fear. Fear creates searching. Searching creates overload. Overload creates more doubt, and doubt sends you back to searching again. The cycle feels active, but it keeps you trapped. More effort starts producing less clarity. This does not mean you were unworthy. It does not mean God was withholding everything from you. It does not mean every difficult season has one hidden spiritual cause. You have been trying to solve inner noise by adding more pressure, and pressure became the very thing making it harder to hear yourself clearly. Today, even briefly, you interrupted that cycle. You did not obey the urge to keep pushing. You allowed a little space between the question and the next reaction. That space matters because it returns something essential to you. It returns agency. You can create conditions instead of demanding outcomes. Open your hand for a moment. Relax your jaw. Let your shoulders fall. Breathe out slowly. You do not need to force what you can learn to receive. This is not permission to become passive. It is permission to stop confusing tension with commitment. Here is the entire pattern in plain language. You were not necessarily missing another sign. You may have been overloaded by signs. You were not necessarily losing your ability. You may have been experiencing an access gap. And the answer is not endless searching. The answer begins with receiver restoration. Receiver restoration has 4 parts. Reduce noise. Integrate what is already present. Restore conditions that support clearer access. Then act on what becomes clear. Action still matters, but action comes after enough clarity has returned to make the next step intentional instead of frantic. The problem was not that you needed to become another person. The problem was that you kept measuring yourself while operating inside a state that made access harder. Once you see that, shame loses some of its power. You can stop asking, "Why am I broken?" and start asking, "What condition am I creating?" Not more force, more access, not another identity, more of you. That is the heartbeat of everything we have covered so far. And now the title makes sense. I use the image of God smiling without claiming to know a literal reaction in heaven. It was a way of naming the joy of a threshold moment. You finally stopped abandoning your own capacity every time uncertainty appeared. You stopped assuming that struggle automatically meant you needed more pressure. You did not find a new key today. You noticed the one already in your hand. And once you stop shaking the door, you can finally use it. This is where understanding becomes practical. Because now that the problem is clear, the next question is obvious. Is there a simple way to support this kind of integration without adding another exhausting practice to your day? That is the tool I promised to show you. It is not a miracle claim. It is not proof that one audio can transform every life. It is an 8-minute protocol built around supporting a more integrated mental state. And now, because you understand the mechanism first, you are in a better position to decide whether it deserves your attention. Now we can look at the tool I promised to show you. It is called the Genius Switch. According to the product material, it is a digital audio program designed around an idea the creator calls neural sync technology. The basic protocol is simple. Put on headphones, close your eyes, relax, and listen for about 8 minutes. The idea behind the product is whole brain integration. The sales material connects that idea to research on how different parts of the brain can contribute different strengths to processing. One name connected to that background is Roger Sperry, whose split-brain research helped clarify hemispheric specialization and earned a Nobel Prize. But keep one distinction clear. The Nobel Prize was not awarded to the genius switch. The work by Sperry does not prove that this commercial audio will produce every result described in its marketing. The research is background for the broader idea of specialization and cooperation. The product is still something you should evaluate on its own claims and your own experience. That precision matters because trust should not disappear the moment a product enters the conversation. I do not want you buying because scientific language sounds impressive. I want you understanding why this tool caught my attention. It fits the mechanism we have been discussing: less complexity, more deliberate integration, a short daily protocol instead of another exhausting routine. The product material presents Dr. Daniel Barone, a neurologist in New York, as the creator behind the program. It also positions the audio as different from generic binaural beats or random frequency tracks. You do not need a long breathing ritual. You do not need expensive equipment. You do not need to write pages of affirmations. The protocol is 8 minutes with headphones. According to testimonials shown in the sales material, some users describe feeling more focused, creative, or mentally present after using it. Those are personal reports, not guarantees. Different people can respond differently. That is why I would rather frame this as an experiment you can evaluate than as a promise about what must happen to you. The current offer in the product material is $39 for lifetime digital access. It also includes 4 bonuses: a guided visualization, a smart grocery shopping guide, a classic manifestation book, and a 5 habits infographic. The seller also states that the purchase comes with a money-back guarantee under its terms. So this is the decision point. Not whether you believe in a miracle, not whether you obey a spiritual command. The question is simpler. Does the mechanism we discussed describe what you have been experiencing, and does an 8-minute daily protocol feel worth testing for yourself? If the answer is yes, you can find the Genius Switch through the link in the description or pinned comment. And if the answer is no, keep the insight anyway. A tool is optional, the principle is not. Reduce noise, create conditions, integrate before you chase more input. Then, act from clarity. Before you decide anything, I want to remove the pressure from the decision. No tool gets to replace your judgment. The Genius Switch is not supposed to become another object you chase because you are afraid of missing your moment. That would recreate the exact pattern we have spent this entire message trying to interrupt. Maybe you are thinking, I have tried audio before. That is fair. If you have used meditation tracks, manifestation audios, binaural beats, or frequency videos, skepticism makes sense. The product material positions this program differently, but positioning alone does not guarantee an outcome for anyone. You still have to decide whether the protocol and the claims make sense to you. Maybe your next thought is, what if nothing happens? That is also fair. Experiences can vary. Some people may notice something quickly, while others may notice very little or nothing at all. The seller states that the product includes a money-back guarantee under its terms, which can reduce the financial downside of testing it. Maybe you wonder whether you need to believe in it first. You do not need to build this decision around belief. You can treat it as a simple protocol and observe your own experience. You also do not need to become an expert meditator. According to the product instructions, the basic process is simply headphones, a relaxed state, and about 8 minutes of listening. Remember the door and the key. A tool cannot walk through the door for you. It cannot choose your priorities. It cannot repair every habit. It cannot make your decisions on your behalf. But if it helps create a condition where clearer access becomes easier for you, then it may become useful as one part of a larger practice. That is why the real decision is not about buying an audio file. It is about whether you are ready to stop building your life around fragmentation. You can keep waking up and flooding your mind with input before your own thoughts have a chance to form. Or you can begin protecting a small space where integration comes first. Picture a simple morning. You wake up. You give yourself 8 quiet minutes before the world starts demanding answers. Then you move into your day with one clear priority. You notice an idea and follow it instead of abandoning it. You speak more deliberately. You finish what deserves your attention. Nothing magical is required. That future is not about becoming superhuman. It is about feeling more present inside your own decisions. And if the genius switch fits the kind of experiment you want to try, the link is in the description or pinned comment. You can review it and decide for yourself. If you are claiming the deeper principle, write this: I choose integration. Not because a comment changes reality, but because language can mark a decision. You are choosing to protect clarity before chasing more noise. There is still one final loop to close. At the beginning, I used the image of God smiling, and it had nothing to do with purchasing anything. The meaning of that image is where this message was always going. Imagine the door one more time. It is in front of you. You are not pounding on it now. You are not shouting for another sign. You look down and notice the key already resting in your hand. Before you turn it, ask yourself one question. What am I ready to stop forcing? Let your hand relax. Let your jaw soften. Let your shoulders fall. You do not need to answer quickly. The purpose of the question is not to produce another performance. It is to reveal where pressure has become so familiar that you started calling it faith, discipline, or destiny. Now we can close the image from the beginning. When I said God smiled, I was not claiming to know a literal reaction in heaven. I was giving language to a moment of release. A moment when someone stops punishing themselves for not having every answer and begins taking better care of what they have already been given. God did not smile because you bought something. God did not smile because you obeyed this video. The image matters because you stopped abandoning yourself every time uncertainty appeared. You gave reason a place without silencing intuition. You gave intuition a place without abandoning reason. You allowed cooperation instead of constant conflict. You did not suddenly receive a new mind today. You began changing the conditions under which your mind is allowed to show you more of what it can do. That is a quieter miracle than the ones people usually chase. It is also one you can participate in through your choices. You can pause without quitting. You can question without losing faith. You can work hard without worshipping pressure. You can rest without calling yourself lazy. You can use reason without becoming cold. You can use intuition without surrendering judgment. You can create conditions for clarity, then act when the next step becomes clear. Say this to yourself: I am not behind. I am not required to force. I can pause without quitting. I can question without losing faith. I can create conditions for clarity. I can act on what becomes clear. And most of all, I am not searching for another key. I am learning to use the one in my hand. That is the declaration, not another key, not another identity, not another desperate search for proof. More access, more integration, more responsibility for the state you bring into your decisions. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to stop turning every difficult moment into evidence that something essential has left you. If this message describes the threshold you are standing on, write this: I am ready to receive. Let the words mark a choice to stop feeding unnecessary noise and start protecting the conditions where your own clarity can return. And if messages like this help you connect spiritual reflection with grounded self-understanding, subscribe and stay close. There will be more. But do not leave this one by immediately searching for another sign. Give it room. Let one useful idea become behavior before you ask for the next. The door is still there. The key is still in your hand. The receiver is still yours to care for. And perhaps that is why the image of heaven smiling feels so right tonight. Not because your work is finished, chosen one, but because for the first time in a long time, you stopped fighting the person who has to walk through the door.